In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Dear viewers of the News Network, I wish you peace and warmly welcome you to tonight's special news interview, and we apologize for presenting this interview to you with a slight delay. Also, we are on the eve of the anniversary of the martyrdom of the great and dignified martyrs of the 12-Day War, the second imposed war. We honor the memory of the martyrs of the first, second, and third imposed wars, and God willing, these dear ones will be immersed in divine mercy. Well, as we promised, and as it was brought to your attention in the News Network's ticker, tonight we are hosting Mr. Dr. Aragchi, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we will talk about current issues, especially the discussion of negotiations and the agreement. Well, it seems that in the 72 hours we left behind, we first witnessed a clash, and after about 48 hours of conflict that occurred, the US President announced that he is close to an agreement and is suspending his attacks, and this suspension of attacks happened in approximately the past 24 hours. And from about 48 hours before that, we went from a conflict to being close to an agreement. Tonight, Mr. Aragchi, as they had also announced in their tweet, will inform the people about the details of the agreement at an appropriate time. I will ask if the appropriate time is now or later, but we will try to hear the latest news about this agreement and negotiations directly from him. Mr. Doctor, I send my greetings. Good evening, and you are very welcome.
I also send my greetings to you and all the honorable viewers. I am very happy that once again, after a long time, this opportunity has fallen to me to be at your service in person and have an interview with our dear people. Allow me, before anything else, to offer my condolences. First of all, for the martyrdom of our martyred leader, and also the precious martyrs we had in the 4-Day War, and the martyrs of various incidents we all experienced during these 4 days, and also the anniversary of the martyrs of the 12-Day War, which we are facing in these very days. We have been through 2 very heavy wars over the course of a year. It is a reality, a 12-day war, and then I think they thought that perhaps they hadn't prepared their equipment enough. Perhaps they thought they should first target our strong point, which is social cohesion. They made some preparations and readied themselves for a larger war. In the meantime, we had the 18th of Day incident and the like, and then we faced the 4-Day War, where they imagined that this time they could finish the job based on their vain illusions. But they were met with a very heroic and fierce resistance from the Iranian armed forces and the Iranian people. I use this word fierce because just a day or two ago, a Western official said that we didn't believe the Iranian people or Iran could be so fierce and resist so fiercely. Well, this fierceness, this resistance that took place during the 4 days of war, and after that during the ceasefire until now, is first of all owed to our armed forces who sacrificed their lives. Enough has been said. Truly, we owe every single member of our armed forces, every single martyr of our armed forces who sacrificed their lives. Truly, from their commanders to their soldiers, those who were behind the launches, those who were in the boats, those who were in various centers and resisted, stood firm until they attained martyrdom, but saved the country. And similarly, we owe the people who during this time did not leave the armed forces, the officials, and the whole country alone for a single moment. Every night they were in the streets, every day they were on the scene. They resisted against shortages, against hardships, they persevered, they were patient, and their presence on the scene has rightly been described as an uprising and a kind of awakening. Well, we witnessed this. Alongside it, our media, the IREB, truly played a crucial role. Our media, and smaller than all of these, I state, our diplomacy. Our diplomats who tried during this time to first be the rightful voice of the Iranian people in the global arena through meetings, interviews, and tweets, which you all witnessed what was done, and to defend the interests of the Iranian people, and at the same time, to be a companion to the armed forces in the actions that were taken and the resistance that takes place. I have always said this, that this debate over the field and diplomacy has always been a very serious one. there is truly no duality between them. Some even say their unity. I say not even unity. There must be a oneness between these two. These two move in the same direction, toward the same goal, each from within a different trench. I have always believed, and let me say this, that it also has a third pillar, which is the media. That is, the field, diplomacy, and media move together. This time, a fourth pillar was also added, the street. Now the street is the manifestation of the people's presence, and these four pillars moved together. Diplomacy's duty is to support the field, and its duty is to consolidate the field's achievements. All the actions that the armed forces take, the achievements they have, the progress they make, are consolidated and gain legitimacy through diplomacy. It gains legitimacy, meaning international legitimacy, is presented in the international arena, is established, and turns into the rights of the Iranian people. In this four-day war, I think our friends and commanders in the armed forces will also testify to this close, direct, and continuous connection that existed between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the armed forces, between myself and the commanders, between my colleagues and them, similarly in all areas. And we moved alongside them. The duty of diplomacy is to consolidate field achievements, and this is what is done in negotiations and in the format of agreements that are the result of negotiations. I have said many times, and I repeat it again, negotiation and the negotiator rely on field powers. Under no circumstances is there any negotiator who can reach an achievement without a field power. Yes, the skills of diplomats might shift this up or down by 1%, but it is in truth the power of the field that emerges and manifests in the diplomatic arena and is consolidated. And this is exactly what we have done over these months, especially when it comes to the discussion related to an agreement that can end the war. Because in any case, the end of this war must fundamentally be an agreement. And the best time to end the war is when you have the upper hand and the superior hand, and you are the victor of the field. And we, not that I want to chant slogans, we truly are the victors in this field. Truly, the Islamic Republic of Iran has won in this heavy arena. The main point is that the Iranian people have won. This is not a slogan, nor is it exaggeration. I am stating this as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as someone who every day has phone conversations or in-person meetings with various foreign ministers and political officials. I either have a phone conversation or an in-person meeting, and I hear from them that no one knew Iran like this. Iran emerged stronger from this war. The image of a weak Iran was completely shattered. You created a marvel. Again, I state, these are not slogans. These are sentences I have heard from foreign officials. I can name them. It's not appropriate here, but I can name them. With one of the officials, when I spoke a few words about how we resisted, and then I moved on to other topics, he said that you spoke very little of the heroism the Iranian people displayed. Meaning, right now, the world is looking at Iran and the Iranian people as a hero, as a marvel. It's no joke. For 4 days, we stood against the greatest apparent superpower in the world, alongside another armed army fighting beside it, both armed with nuclear weapons, both equipped with the most advanced weapons. And to resist and stand firm and frustrate them from reaching their goals. A massive victory, meaning we achieved a strategic victory. And well, naturally, you are the victor of the field strategically when the war ends, based on an agreement or an understanding that consolidates this victory of yours. Therefore, as one of our main missions, we pursued these negotiations that would lead to consolidating the victory of the Iranian people. We always sought a strategic opening. The responsibility of the negotiation was handed over to my esteemed brother, Mr. Dr. Galibaf, by the establishment. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is at his service. Other institutions that need to help are at his service, and we started a movement that is now getting close to its end. The result of this movement is a 14-article memorandum of understanding, which is being discussed in the media. And I prefer that its details be expressed when it is finalized, meaning I promise to do it here, not right now, naturally, because it has not been signed yet, and up to the last moment, things might go up or down. Therefore, I prefer that when it is finished, I come and translate every single detail of these for the people. Of course, we have discussed the details of these over and over and over again in various. Therefore, I prefer that when it is finished, I come and translate every single detail of these for the people. Of course, we have discussed the details of these over and over and over again in various meetings for the country's officials, for the Supreme National Security Council, for those who are decision makers. Instructions have been given to us, specific phrases have been moved around, and we have followed all of this. If I tell you which version the draft currently in our hands is, you wouldn't believe how many versions have changed until we reach this point. Its general outlines have been discussed in the media, and we will talk about its details at another opportunity. But the point I must state is this. In these negotiations that will lead to the end of the war, 2 phases have been foreseen. Phase 1 is a memorandum of understanding that is signed between Iran and America. Then negotiations for Phase 2 will start, and then in Phase 2, we will have a final agreement. We postponed the nuclear issue to the final agreement for various reasons, truly because under the current conditions, it was impossible to discuss. The demands they had were completely unacceptable. Therefore, we moved other issues where agreement was possible into the first phase and postponed the nuclear issue to the second phase, which is, well, a harder phase, and 60 days of negotiation have been foreseen for it. In the second phase, or the final agreement, the nuclear issue, alongside the issue of lifting sanctions on Iran, and 1 or 2 other issues that I will state when the time is right, will be reviewed, and the final agreement will take place. In the current agreement, whose name is a Memorandum of Understanding and is known as the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, or the name Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding has been put on it. The end of the war is declared on all fronts, including Lebanon. We never forgot Lebanon in this war, because after all, Lebanon and Lebanese Hezbollah fought alongside the Iranian people in this war, and we will never leave them alone. In the ceasefire that was declared, the ceasefire was on all fronts, including Lebanon. Now never mind that the Zionist regime violated it, which Hezbollah answered. Whenever it was necessary, we answered. And this answer of ours itself, in my opinion, was another strategic achievement, that for the first time, we were the initiators of the attack to punish the regime that had deviated from its commitments. And this was recorded in the global arena as a strategic victory for Iran, that Iran showed it is not joking, and if necessary, not only does it not, now never mind that the Zionist regime violated it, which Hezbollah answered. Whenever it was necessary, we answered. And this answer of ours itself, in my opinion, was another strategic achievement, that for the first time, we were the initiators of the attack to punish the regime that had deviated from its commitments, and this was recorded in the global arena as a strategic victory for Iran, that Iran showed it is not joking, and if necessary, not only does it not fear war, but wherever necessary, it will use it. Therefore, the war on all fronts will end, including in Lebanon, and a commitment will be given that they will no longer initiate war, and the threat or use of force will not be used. Similarly, both sides will respect each other's sovereignty. And I think this is the first time, after 47 years, that America explicitly respects the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran and states this and puts it in writing. And it also asks us to mutually respect America's sovereignty. It commits not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs and asks us to commit not to interfere in its internal affairs, meaning from a completely equal position. And I think this is one of the most important clauses of this agreement, that respect is given to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Respect is given to the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I think many will fully understand what this means, that they should completely leave the scene. Those abroad who might have pinned hopes. Well, there is the discussion of the Strait of Hormuz with its details, the discussion of lifting the naval blockade, the discussion of the next round of negotiations, which will include what topics, the discussion of Iran's quota, the discussion of lifting sanctions, the issue of reconstruction in the format of an economic reconstruction and development plan is brought up here, whose mechanisms will be agreed upon during the next negotiations. And now other issues that will happen, the discussion of Iran's blocked funds, for which a mechanism has been specified. These are the items that are in the Memorandum of Understanding, and in the first phase, an agreement is made on them. I state that when it is finalized and signed, I will definitely present the full details here and explain clause by clause, word by word even, what it means and what achievements it brings for us.
I state that considering the time constraints you are under, and it is before the signing, you naturally have no intention to explain more details.
Look, I must frankly state that this agreement has enemies, and at the head of them is the Zionist regime, and they are looking for pretexts to disrupt this agreement. I might at another opportunity state the details of the efforts the Zionist regime made during this time for this. Right now, entering into details creates a tense media atmosphere in which reaching an, meaning signing the agreement, could face difficulties. In the way that you observed in the past 2 days, or especially today, various texts are being presented by different media, different websites. Everyone claims this is the text, because this problem exists on the other side too, meaning the other side also has different texts being presented, different claims are being brought up, and in the region it is the same. Therefore, the Americans, I saw they said this, and we on this side said that currently no form of these texts has any validity, and the speculations taking place in the media, we are not in a position to. Therefore, the Americans, I saw they said this, and we on this side said that currently no form of these texts has any validity, and the speculations taking place in the media, we are not in a position to confirm any form of them. And I advise that they truly allow calm and the psychological atmosphere of the country to prevail so we can reach the best agreement possible. When I say the best agreement possible, it is because when we move toward an agreement which is a matter between two sides, negotiation, which is a matter between two sides, we reach an agreement when both sides have a level of satisfaction. Necessarily, this is not always 50-50, but ultimately, both sides must have reached a point of satisfaction to consent to the understanding. There is no agreement and no accord where one side wins 100 and the opposing side 0. This, in my opinion, is an obvious matter in diplomacy. When you choose the path of negotiation and dialogue, it means in truth you consent to come and give and take. One of the points, because regarding the developments of the past 72 hours, you pointed out that I should say, well, we witnessed that some threats were also made, and an atmosphere of psychological and political pressure was attempted to be created for Iran. We immediately confronted this. Both the statements the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued, and the tweet I posted, and the statements from our armed forces, the statement of the Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters, and the messages sent directly or through intermediaries. That under these conditions, a threat is not only ineffective, but pushes the possible agreement backward, and the threats must stop. It must be spoken with the language of respect so we can reach an agreement. The Iranian nation has shown that it will never submit to pressure and force, not at all, and it does not respond to the language of threat, to the language of force. But if spoken to with the language of respect, naturally, the Iranian nation will also answer with the language of respect.
The hour, meaning it was an analysis, and then we arrived at the point that we are now close to negotiation and an agreement. Was it because of the decisive response that the Islamic Republic? Because the narrative that I want to be certain of, the US president's narrative, is that I attacked to force the Iranians to sit at the negotiating table. And after 24 hours, he spun it this way.
In my opinion, the whole world is familiar with these tweets and their remarks. And in my opinion, it is very clear that usually whatever they want to happen, they say it through the words of others. One shouldn't pay much attention to these. Our issue is clear. If we were going to submit to force and pressure, we would have submitted much earlier than this. If threats of attacking infrastructure, threats of attacking this and that, were supposed to make us back down, we would have backed down much earlier than this. No, very clear messages were given here to the opposing side that threats have the opposite effect. If you want us to move toward an understanding, the rhetoric must change. If you want to move toward threats, pressure, and war, we are ready and we will go, just as during the past nights, they experienced us every night. If we were going to back down, we would have backed down during the past nights. There was not a single night where an aggression took place against our armed forces or our ships without our armed forces immediately responding. Iran has proven itself in this situation. Time and again, they experimented on us, tested us, and ultimately got the answer to their experiment, got the answer to the tests they ran. We will under no circumstances back down in the face of force, pressure, and threats. Under no circumstances will our rhetoric change. Under no circumstances will we overlook the interests of the Iranian people. Yes, if they speak with the language of respect, if our national interests are secured, we won't overlook that either. These two are in line with each other. Negotiation is a part of the field, and the result of the field is in the negotiation. These two move together. I ask all friends to please pay attention to this. It is a great error if we think that the field and diplomacy each go their own way, and then we argue which path is better. No. During the time I have been in office, we have practically proven this with our friends in the armed forces. We move in one direction. Sometimes the field must go forward, and diplomacy supports it from behind. Sometimes diplomacy goes forward, and the field supports it from behind. And these two complement each other as two wings that make flight, make soaring possible. They work together. And this is something we have experienced in practice as well. In practice, our diplomacy has been completely at the service of the field, and the field has also completely supported diplomacy. And the result is this victory that has been achieved so far.
Well, you saw. This is the achievement, that we are now reaching an agreement. What is the reality of it? The items regarding which we will make an agreement?
In this 4-day battle, 12-day and 4-day, and then the resistance during the ceasefire and countering the naval blockade, in all of these, it has appeared in such a way, demonstrated its power in such a way, that never again will anyone even think of messing with the Iranian people, messing with the Islamic Republic. For guaranteeing our own security, we do not believe in the Security Council, nor in other international organizations, nor in coalitions and alliances, and these partnerships and such. No, we don't discard them. Why should we? We give them importance too. We deal with them in their own place. But for our own security, we do not rely on anyone except the divine essence, our own people, and the capabilities of our own armed forces. And we have proven this so much in practice that I am certain we have created a complete deterrence for ourselves for years, so that no one will think of aggressing against Iran anymore. The Strait of Hormuz, ultimately right now with this, is one of our important tools of deterrence, and it acts. Our action at the regional level, no one thinks that we well, let's say it this way, expand the war at the regional level. Of course, at the regional level, the American bases that are spread in the region cannot confront us. Therefore, we have created an intrinsic guarantee for ourselves for our own security and to ensure that those who are dealing with us remain committed to their obligations. But specifically on the subject of the Memorandum of Understanding, we, so to speak, have this position too, because after the Memorandum of Understanding, negotiations will start for 60 days to reach the main agreement. And the main agreement, the nuclear discussions, which, well, the Americans have more of an interest in, will be brought up there. Therefore, if what has come in the Memorandum of Understanding is not implemented, it is natural that those negotiations will not move forward either. And we have this authority, we will not allow it. While the Memorandum of Understanding has not been implemented, how can we negotiate for the final agreement? Therefore, a guarantee also exists here that, so to speak, the items that have come in the Memorandum of Understanding, or will come and will be signed, must be observed by the opposing side.
Some are worried about those JCPOA experiences, glaring violations, and things that might happen. Meaning, the Memorandum of Understanding that you mention will serve as a guarantee that if it is not implemented, we won't enter that phase at all. Are you certain?
Yes, indeed. Meaning, the difference that exists this time is that we still haven't reached the final agreement. And this is an initial agreement, or a first step, or a first phase, whatever we name it. Negotiations will take place for the main phase. Therefore, if the agreements of the first phase, at the very least, are not observed, we will not go to the second phase. This in itself creates a guarantee. I think we are in a good position in this regard. Of course, let me also say this. The nature of the opposing parties is to break promises, to create 1,001 problems in implementation. We have this experience. With this in mind, I must state right here, we must expect, so to speak, various problems in the implementation of both this Memorandum of Understanding and that final agreement, if we reach it. We are not facing parties who are completely committed to their obligations. They use every opportunity to break promises. It is we who must close the paths to broken promises, and we must have the capability, by relying on our own power, not to allow them to fail to act on their commitments.
One of the discussions was the issue of freeing the blocked funds. Well, recently, the Vice President of America, J.D. Vance, had said that no money will be paid to Iran and no financial resources planned to be released merely in exchange for signing a Memorandum of Understanding or attending a meeting. Considering that you also had a trip to Qatar alongside Mr. Galibaf regarding the financial mechanisms and frameworks for the release of Iran's blocked funds, what situation will this face?
As you said, some mechanisms have been discussed and negotiated for this. I prefer that if the Memorandum of Understanding is signed, and when those events that are supposed to happen afterward do happen, and when we explain so we can see what has happened, let's just allow not entering into the details right now.
One of the topics that people have currently been very affected by is the Strait of Hormuz, which you also pointed out. And the concern is exactly this. When it is said that there is freedom of navigation for vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, does it mean that this will return to its previous state? Will any understanding that has occurred regarding the Strait of Hormuz possibly revert to the state before it was closed and controlled by Iran, or not? With Iran's arrangements, will this freedom take place?
Look, the Strait of Hormuz is under the sovereignty of Iran, and Oman, of course. Meaning, this area of the Strait of Hormuz falls within our internal waters, our territorial waters, and Oman's. Therefore, sovereignty here undoubtedly belongs to Iran and to Oman. For years and years, this waterway has been open to all ships. Iran and Oman, because it is their territorial waters, have provided various services. They secured its security, ensured the safety of traffic, marked the routes, and preserved the environment there. After all, these ships created pollution as they moved. They provided search and rescue services if there were any incidents, and many other services were provided. Well, until now, the premise was that all of these would be free of charge. But this is the serious decision of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that the future of the Strait of Hormuz, the future of the administration of the Strait of Hormuz, will no longer be like the past. When I say the future of the administration, it is because our sovereignty has always existed. It exists now, and it will always exist. No one can undermine Iran's sovereignty over this strait, alongside Oman, of course. But as to whether the administration of this strait, the administration of traffic in this strait, will not be like the past, it will definitely not be like the past. And in this regard, we have had very close consultations with our friends in Oman, because they are the main partner in this matter, and we have reached good results too. Probably a joint plan will be announced by us soon. We will have joint statements. We held numerous expert meetings with them. Similarly, we have started consultations with other countries in the region, other countries for which this waterway is important, in any case. For example, a country like China, this waterway has a lot of importance for it. The estimate that our friends had made, as I have it in my mind, is that nearly 40% of the traffic is these ships or goods that are going to China, or coming from China, or they are Chinese ships, or fly the Chinese flag. Well, China is an economic power, there is no doubt, and it has a very, very high volume of trade with the world, especially with our region. Well, they are also among our friends, and in any case, the future of the administration of this strait is naturally important for China too. Therefore, we also started consultations with China and with our other friends, now I don't want to bring up names, with various countries. In any case, the work that our armed forces did is in its own place. It is natural that we cannot control the strait forever through military means, so to speak. Why are our armed forces present? Wherever necessary, they will intervene militarily. There is no doubt about this. Our sword will always be present over the head of the Strait of Hormuz. This is now different from the past. This is certain. But if we want traffic to take place, and the administration of the Strait of Hormuz to be carried out in a way different from the past, it is natural that a legal regime must be established there. And this must be in accordance with international law. We have done complete reviews from the perspective of international law as well. Purely taking tolls is not acceptable, but taking fees for services is completely...
Will this be witnessed in these 60 days after this implementation as well?
In the 60 days, look, now the 60 days might have its own specific arrangements. For us, what is important is that the system of administration of the strait in the future is clear as to who is handling it, and that the services provided in the future, their costs will no longer be free. It is important that this is consolidated, and this will be consolidated in the agreement. Or now, God willing, when it is finalized, you will see that this important matter has been consolidated. That yes, there will be costs here, and the costs must be paid. The future of the administration of the Strait of Hormuz is different from the past, and Iran will do this work. And the arrangements that must be adopted will be adopted by Iran. And all vessels, all ships will comply. Of course, commercial ships are meant, non-military ships. Military ones have their own specific arrangements which will be dealt with separately. In any case, what is certain from our perspective is that the future of the Strait of Hormuz will never be like its past. The future of the administration of the Strait of Hormuz will not be like its past.
What will happen to the American blockade, Mr. Doctor?
The American blockade must be lifted, meaning it is the first thing that has been pointed out in this agreement, that it must be completely lifted.
And the discussion of reparations? Yes. Now, I would like to point out the remarks made by the US Secretary of the Treasury, and he had said that, now from the other side of the story, he explicitly announced that the Iranian team has commissioned an assessment of damages to Arab countries to pay them from Iran's frozen assets. He even threatened that the tolls received by Iran from ships in the Strait of Hormuz will be offset and confiscated through Iran's foreign assets.
Now, we do not pay attention to these claims, and if they want to take any action, we will confront them. In our opinion, this basically holds no weight. Regarding these remarks, Iran's frozen assets too, according to the Memorandum of Understanding that will be signed, now we call it both a Memorandum of Understanding and an Accord, it depends on the translation anyone might do. Based on this, our assets will also be freed, and none of our assets can remain frozen again. This is completely clear. For the reconstruction of the damages inflicted on Iran, an economic plan has been foreseen in this agreement, which I state is one of those items whose details must be discussed. I hope that when it is finalized, the IRIB will invite economic experts and inform the people of its details about what will happen and how, so to speak, significant resources will be injected into the Iranian economy through this. And the name of the plan there is the Reconstruction Plan. Therefore, the issue of damages and reparations has also been foreseen in this plan, so to speak.
That lifting of the blockade you mentioned, is this lifting of the blockade in exchange for the closure we have in the Strait of Hormuz?
In this, we cannot say what is in exchange for what. We have 14 clauses in the form of a package. These 14 must all be looked at together. For Iran, for example, it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. For them, it will also have 1, 2, and 3, for example, whatever it will have. Later on, we can even show these in a comparative table to see what has happened in practice. But in my opinion, this approach is not correct to say, well, this is in exchange for that. No, there are a series of actions we are taking in one package, all in exchange for all.
And regarding the nuclear issue, we already understood that we will talk about it during those 60 days. But is it possible to predict from now, for example, regarding the enriched uranium, the discussion of their export and their removal, discussions that were previously held, for example, is there anything specific being decided from now?
No decision has been made from now, meaning to say exactly what will happen. But there are indications as to what things we will discuss. The two important discussions that have been referred to the final agreement are the lifting of Iran's sanctions and nuclear issues. Regarding nuclear issues, it is also indicated here that the discussion of enrichment is there, which must be discussed there to see how it will be. The discussion of Iran's enriched materials, the stockpiles of enriched materials will be discussed there, and their status will be determined, so to speak. Of course, our position has always been that high-level enriched materials, specifically 60% materials, it has been our position from the past, the position of our sector, that if their status is to be determined, in our view, the only method is their dilution inside Iran. And in any case, we are trying to have this indicated in some way that the solution will be along this very line. On the other side, regarding the lifting of sanctions, although it is said that all sanctions will be removed in the final agreement, we have specifically pointed out the items that are important to us as to which sanctions must definitely be removed, so to speak. And I state that we will discuss its details later as to what happens in the final agreement regarding the sanctions, what is supposed to happen regarding the nuclear issue as a result of the negotiations. Similarly, the mechanism of that reconstruction plan will be discussed during these 60 days, so to speak, and will be agreed upon in the final agreement, so to speak.
And a question they ask, for example, is that in those 60 days, if we do not reach an agreement, meaning after this memorandum of understanding, we don't reach that final agreement, will all these events and processes revert to their previous state?
This depends on, so to speak, what position we are in, how much progress we have made in terms of negotiations, or how much we haven't. In any case, a few scenarios might occur. The first scenario is that both sides are satisfied with the extent of the negotiations' progress. Therefore, they decide to extend these 60 days. It is also foreseen in the agreement that these 60 days are extendable, meaning, if at the end of the 60 days we see that yes, the negotiations have progressed well, for example, if, for example, we negotiate for another 10 days, another month, we might reach an agreement, the two sides themselves agree and extend it. It is possible that at the end of the 60 days, we reach the conclusion that it is of no use, and reaching an agreement is not possible. Well, it is natural that, so to speak, we will not have the final agreement. What will happen to the agreement here? Naturally, everyone has the right to return to the previous situation. An agreement might take place that no, we will continue these in some form now. I don't want to judge from now, because it truly depends on what position we are in at the end of the 60 days, how much the negotiations have progressed, and what kind of atmosphere we are ultimately facing. At that time, we will decide what to do if we did not reach a result.
And let this be my last question, God willing. Let's see, what is the relationship right now between the Memorandum of Understanding and that statement of the Supreme National Security Council on the day of the ceasefire? Are the preconditions that Iran set for the ceasefire now going to be realized with the Memorandum of Understanding?
The preconditions that were set for the ceasefire were realized in their own time, which allowed the ceasefire to continue. The Supreme National Security Council has complete oversight over these negotiations. It had it from the ceasefire itself, and then the negotiations after that. Now, too, it has complete oversight over this Memorandum of Understanding. I stated that it has been discussed many times. Considering that the Supreme National Security Council cannot convene regularly, they designated a committee from a number of the Council's members, which is a more limited group. They supervise the negotiation process, and wherever necessary, they report to the Supreme Council, so to speak. I want to state that there is complete oversight by the Supreme National Security Council over the negotiations. It exists over the text of the understanding. All the clauses of the understanding, the words of the understanding, have been discussed there. Of course, it has its supporters and opponents. But ultimately, the entirety of the Supreme Council decides together on how it should be approached. And as everyone knows, the decisions of the Supreme Council, after going through certain stages, turn into a directive and are communicated to everyone.
Is there any point, Mr. Doctor, that you were inclined to state that I might not have asked, that the people should be informed about?
I, as a part of this, now since our topic today has been this very negotiation, I stated, the responsibility for the negotiation is clear, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as the part that helps, is well clear. I can give this assurance that at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, those tasks that were assigned to us, truly the utmost precision, the utmost meticulousness, and the utmost caution have taken place. That is exactly why it has taken this long. The Memorandum of Understanding in its entirety is not 2 pages. Maybe it will only be a page and a half when it is typed. But now I think it has been nearly 2 months that it is being negotiated. Word by word, clause by clause, sentence by sentence, it has gone up and down many times. And I can assure you, we have truly exercised all the necessary precision. Reports have been given in a timely manner to the Supreme National Security Council and the institutions that they must be given to. Our security institutions had oversight over the negotiation process. Our military forces had oversight because in the Supreme Council and in that committee I mentioned, the commanders of the armed forces are also present. They applied their own precision on the discussions of the Strait. They had their own precision on the discussion of ending the war. In all discussions, truly, precision has been applied, and I think that the result of the work will be a good result for the interests of the Iranian people. It will consolidate our field victories, and it will consolidate this street presence, the people in the streets. It consolidates this power that the Islamic Republic of Iran has gained after this war, and I am truly very hopeful regarding the future of the Islamic Republic with the way we emerged from this war, with our flag held high, standing tall, with our heads held high. And then, God willing, with these matters that have been foreseen in the Memorandum of Understanding and such, I am very hopeful that our process of flourishing will be much more than in the past.
Are the conditions of this round of negotiations different from the previous 2 stages that led to war or resulted in war because of this?
Now, I am glad you mentioned this. I must explain this. Look, In the past 2 wars, negotiation did not lead to war. Resistance led to war. Our enemies had demands that they tried to achieve in negotiations. They couldn't. We resisted. They turned to war. They thought they would achieve them through war. And what was their demand? Their demand is not a hidden thing either. The most important one was zero enrichment, right? This demand of theirs, meaning zero enrichment, they stated from the first day. In the 12-day war, we went to negotiations. We had 5 rounds of negotiation. They insisted on zero enrichment. And we, according to the instructions given to the negotiating team, resisted in this matter. Then they thought that if they come and bombard, for example, our nuclear technology will be destroyed. They came and did it, didn't they? They couldn't destroy the materials. They couldn't destroy the knowledge. Yes, they destroyed the facilities. I have said it many times too. Everyone said it. Facilities, buildings, machines, all of these are built again. Why? Because its technology and science exist. Even scientists are replaced. Our hearts are truly wounded. For every single scientist we lost, and all the others we lost, at the head of them, our martyred leader. But in any case, scientists are replaced. They couldn't destroy the science and this industry in Iran, neither in the 12-day war nor in the 4-day war. After the 12-day war, they again intended to come to war. They tested it again, to see if we back down in diplomacy, to see if we back down in negotiation. They saw no, we stood firm. They went to war again, especially since this entire path was truly clear to us. Now it has been said many times, some tactical surprises may be occurred. For example, suppose that at that moment individuals shouldn't have participated in some meetings, which led to their martyrdom. These can be considered as tactical surprises. But strategically, we were not surprised. Whether in the first war or the second war, we had the readiness for everything, just as we were able to resist. In the first 12-day war, it took less than a few hours until we started responding, and everything was positioned. In the 4-day war, it took less than 2 hours until we started responding because everything was ready. The instructions were clear. If an attack happened this way, the response is that way. If this person is martyred, everything was clear. There was no surprise involved. Why did a war happen? Because we didn't back down in negotiations. Because we resisted in negotiations just as we resisted in the war. They became hopeless about reaching their goals in negotiation. And in the war too, they became hopeless about reaching their goals. In these negotiations too, this has been our word, and our word is very firm, that if you think you'll achieve in negotiation the things you couldn't achieve in the war, you are mistaken. What you didn't reach in the war, you won't reach in negotiation either. And when they became certain they couldn't reach their demands in the war, they requested negotiation. Do you remember where they started from? In this very 4-day war. On that very first day they tweeted again. What was the headline? Unconditional surrender. It wasn't more than 2 words, meaning they had come to force the surrender of the Iranian people. Then they saw it didn't materialize. They resisted. Then they said regime change. Well, it didn't happen. Then they said the dismemberment of Iran. They themselves confessed to which groups they armed and where. That later, they themselves said they didn't understand where these weapons went. Well, they tested everything. Then they came towards negotiation when they became hopeless about a military war. They became hopeless about reaching their goals. And we, Iran, the Iranian people, the Iranian armed forces, all these plots were defeated. When it is said we reached a strategic victory, it is for this reason, that we showed the Islamic Republic to the world in such a way that the whole world confessed they are facing a firm, solid, fierce, and decisive country that has a multi-thousand-year civilization behind it. A firm belief, an Islamic belief, a Shiite belief is behind it, and it stands firm. And, for example, it is completely different, like night and day, from examples in other places where they removed one person and everything changed. A while ago, I heard that one of the American officials had said that we just understood who the Iranians are different from. Now, I won't bring up that name. Iranians are different. How did we show this? With our resistance and our fierceness. And this is exactly what truly gives me hope, that when God willing, these achievements are also consolidated in the diplomatic arena. At that time, our greater growth and leap toward a much better future will begin.
Is its time and place predictable? And does it seem it will happen with a special ceremony? this signing of the Memorandum of Agreement/Understanding?
Look, as soon as the final stages of our negotiations are completed, this agreement will be signed and announced. This signing in the first phase will be done digitally and remotely. Each side will sign, and then it will be announced that this Memorandum of Understanding has been signed by both sides. It will be announced, and it is done. As I also said in my tweet today, we are closer to that point than ever.
Meaning, it might happen in the next 1 or 2 days?
It's possible. It might happen within the next few days. I am hopeful. That is exactly why I requested in the tweet that the media refrain from speculations that could truly disturb the atmosphere psychologically, politically, and internationally in a way that, so to speak, damages this opportunity. Let them be patient. Let our work move forward with its own principles, with its own logic. When it is finalized, God willing, I will talk about it.